What's going on, everyone? Let me tell you about something that absolutely dominated the conversation on NBA Today this afternoon that has the entire Knicks community experiencing a mixture of excitement about player health news and wild speculation about roster moves that could take this team to the next level. I'm talking about the kind of news day where you get positive updates about OG Anunoby returning from injury, where you see an absolutely dominant defensive performance from Mikal Bridges that has everyone talking about Defensive Player of the Year, and where roster construction and front court depth needs become the focus as the Knicks continue steamrolling team. This isn't just about another win over the Raptors or impressive rebounding statistics. This is about whether the Knicks are finally going to address their need for center depth by bringing in someone like Andre Drummond from the Philadelphia 76ers to give them that physical presence and veteran experience they need for a deep playoff run. So buckle up, because what I'm about to share from today's NBA Today broadcast isn't just about one game or one potential roster move. This is about championship team building, about health management and minutes, about defensive philosophy, and about whether the Knicks have all the necessary pieces to truly compete for a title. Knicks Nation, I need you right now. That like button is how we grow and reach more fans. 1 second, 1 click, changes everything. If you bleed orange and blue, prove it. Smash that like button. Let's build this together. All right, here's the situation that had the entire NBA Today panel absolutely excited this afternoon. And I'm talking about veteran basketball analysts who've covered the Knicks for years and couldn't hide their enthusiasm about what they're seeing from this team right now. The main story that emerged wasn't just that the Knicks crushed the Raptors 116-94 to improve to 10-1 at Madison Square Garden, although that obviously got discussed extensively. It was about the combination of OG Anunoby progressing in his rehabilitation and potentially returning before the end of the calendar year, Mikal Bridges playing Defensive Player of the Year level defense, and Josh Hart proving that he can never go back to the bench with his impact as a starter. But underneath all that excitement was this persistent question about whether the Knicks have enough front court depth to truly compete in the playoffs, especially given Mitchell Robinson's injury history, and whether they should be aggressively pursuing someone like Andre Drummond. Let me start by giving you the full context that NBA Today was establishing at the beginning of the broadcast, because understanding both the Knicks' current health situation and their roster needs is absolutely essential for grasping why the Drummond speculation keeps coming up in conversation. OG Anunoby is doing controlled on-court work and scrimmaging 3-on-3, which, according to reports from insiders like Ian Begley and Christian Winfield, is a really good sign. The analysts were discussing how he's been cleared to take contact, even if it's in a controlled 3-on-3 setting, how there are levels to contact in these scrimmages, and one of the last hurdles is often full contact in 5-on-5 scrimmages. Coach Mike Brown said that Anunoby doing on-court work is a good step in the process, that he's being monitored daily by the Knicks medical and training staff, and that as long as everything continues going well, he'll do more and his contact levels will increase. But here's what really has the NBA Today analysts intrigued about Anunoby's timeline and what it means for roster construction. And this is where the potential return before Christmas becomes so significant. Ian Begley reported that if Anunoby's rehab continues progressing well, it sounds like he'll be back on the court before the end of the calendar year, and he'll obviously return to the starting lineup when he's ready to play. The NBA Today panel was discussing how having Anunoby back before Christmas would be a massive gift for this Knicks team, how his elite defense, alongside what Mikal Bridges is doing right now, would create potentially the best perimeter defensive duo in the entire NBA. The analysts were getting excited imagining lineups with both Anunoby and Bridges on the court, simultaneously suffocating the league's best scorers. The show dove deep into Mikal Bridges' performance against the Raptors and why it was so impressive beyond just the basic statistics. And here's where you really see his defensive excellence becoming impossible to ignore. Bridges had 2 steals and 2 blocks against Toronto, which was his NBA-leading 7th game with at least 2 blocks and 2 steals this season. The NBA Today analysts were showing clips of Bridges defending Brandon Ingram all night long, discussing how he literally had Ingram in jail, as fans were saying, limiting him to just 4 of 11 from the field with 5 turnovers. The panel was breaking down how Bridges picked up 3 quick fouls early because he was playing Ingram so aggressively, but then adjusted his defensive approach and in the second half made Ingram's life absolute hell, either deflecting the ball, stealing it outright, or making things so difficult defensively that Ingram really couldn't get good shots. What the NBA Today crew kept emphasizing, and I think this is absolutely critical for understanding why Bridges should be in Defensive Player of the Year conversations, is his defensive intelligence and ability to learn and adjust within the game. The analysts were discussing how every time Bridges gets burned on something, he learns from that moment immediately and doesn't make the same mistake twice. Against Ingram, once he saw he was being punished for playing too aggressively in the paint and picking up fouls, he adjusted his approach while maintaining his intensity, and the results in the second half were spectacular. The NBA Today panel was making the argument that if Bridges doesn't receive significant Defensive Player of the Year votes, it would be an absolute robbery, that what he's doing defensively this season is on another level. The panel spent extensive time analyzing Josh Hart's case for remaining in the starting lineup even when OG Anunoby returned, and this sparked really passionate debates about roster philosophy and rotation management. Hart had 20 points, 12 rebounds, 7 assists, and 3 steals against the Raptors, numbers that support the argument that his impact as a starter is simply too large to ignore. The NBA Today analysts were going through his numbers since becoming a starter, showing how everything about his game improves when he's in that role. His defense is more intense, his activity level is higher, his offensive aggressiveness increases, his rebounding becomes even more impactful. The panel was making the argument that when Anunoby returns, Hart needs to remain a starter alongside him, and that Deuce McBride and Mitchell Robinson should come off the bench because the fit and impact simply makes more sense that way. What I found particularly fascinating during today's NBA Today discussion was when they started connecting all of this to the Knicks' front court depth needs and why Andre Drummond would make so much sense as a trade target. The analysts were pointing out how Mitchell Robinson had 7 offensive rebounds by himself, which was half of what the entire Raptors team had as a team, discussing how the Knicks destroyed Toronto on the boards 61-40 with a 25-14 advantage in offensive rebounds. But then the panel was asking the question of what happens when Robinson inevitably gets injured given his history, whether Karl Anthony Towns can handle all the center work alone, whether the Knicks have enough physical front court depth to compete in a long playoff series against teams with dominant big men. The show also explored why Andre Drummond specifically makes so much sense as a trade target and what he could offer the Knicks. And this is where the fit becomes really compelling. Drummond is a 4-time NBA rebounding champion who provides exactly the type of physical presence and experience the Knicks need as a backup. He's making only $5 million this season, which is very manageable from a salary cap perspective. It's an expiring contract that doesn't commit the Knicks financially long-term, and he brings veteran experience from having played in high-profile situations throughout his career. The NBA Today analysts were discussing how having Drummond as your third center behind Towns and Robinson would give you incredible depth, how in playoff games where you need physicality against teams like the 76ers with Joel Embiid or the Bucks with Giannis, having Drummond available to give you 15-20 minutes of physical energy would be invaluable. The coverage also dove into Philadelphia's motivations for potentially moving Drummond and why the 76ers might be willing to part with a productive backup. And this is where the trade makes sense for both sides. Philadelphia has Joel Embiid, when healthy, as their starting center. They drafted Johnny Broome and want to give him developmental minutes. And Drummond at $5 million represents salary that could be moved to create more financial flexibility or avoid the second apron of the luxury tax. The NBA Today analysts were discussing how the 76ers might also be looking to acquire draft picks or young talent that fits better with their long-term developmental timeline, how they'd prefer to prioritize minutes for their younger front-court prospects rather than an established veteran like Drummond, who's not part of their future. What really struck me during the NBA Today analysis was when they started discussing what the Knicks would have to give up to get Drummond and whether they have the assets to make a trade happen without affecting their core. The panel was suggesting that given Drummond is on an expiring contract and Philadelphia is motivated to move him for financial reasons, the acquisition cost probably wouldn't be prohibitive. The analysts were throwing out potential packages that might involve second-round picks, plus maybe an end-of-roster player, discussing how the Knicks have the flexibility to make that type of move without sacrificing any of their core pieces. The panel was debating whether it's worth making the move now or if the Knicks should wait until closer to the trade deadline to see how Mitchell Robinson's health developed. One aspect that got really interesting discussion was the quarter-by-quarter breakdown of the Raptors game and what it revealed about the Knicks' strengths and weaknesses. The NBA Today analysts were going through how New York jumped out to a 24-point lead in the first quarter, hitting everything they threw up, including 3 after 3 after 3, with Deuce McBride especially hot from the perimeter. But then, the panel was pointing out how in the second quarter, the Raptors cut that lead to single digits, going on a 9-0 run, with Scotty Barnes hitting consecutive threes, discussing how the Knicks' transition defense issues manifested, allowing Toronto to score easily on the fast break. The analysts were making the point that the Raptors are one of the best teams in the league at scoring in transition, and that the Knicks should have game planned specifically to stop that before it became a problem rather than having to adjust mid-game. Listen, after watching the entire NBA Today segment this afternoon about the Knicks' victory over the Raptors and the health updates on OG Anunoby and the Andre Drummond speculation, I'm absolutely convinced that New York should be aggressive about making a move for front-court depth before the playoffs. Drummond makes perfect sense as a low-cost, low-risk target who addresses immediate needs without costing significant assets or compromising future financial flexibility. Yes, Mitchell Robinson when healthy is fantastic, as he proved with those 7 offensive rebounds, but his injury history is too concerning to trust he'll be available for 16 playoff games. Having Drummond as your third center gives you injury insurance, gives you physicality for different playoff matchups, gives you veteran experience in the locker room. If the Knicks can get him for a couple of second-round picks and maybe an end-of-roster player, it's the type of no-brainer move that championship teams make to shore up weaknesses without sacrificing strengths.